Her name was Honoria Fenn. She was 60 years old. She lived in 2 rooms above a stationer's shop in Hastings on £47 a year, and in 11 years her 4 nephews and nieces had written to her only 4 times a year. At the quarter days, when money was wanted, she filed each begging letter, dated, in a deal box. And she said nothing. At her sister-in-law's funeral, before the whole gathered family, her nephew Gerald said of her, "Aunt Honoria's letters? Sentiment in a box. Burn the lot when she's gone." Nobody contradicted him. But 3 deal boxes in 2 small rooms held the only surviving record of what this family did in 1849. A £600 advance, now worth ruin in Chancery to settle, and every one of them was about to need it. If you are the one in your family who kept the letters, the photographs, the record everyone else threw away, this story is for you. Before we go on, subscribe to the channel and comment which town you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. The mornings in Hastings began with the gulls. Honoria was always awake before them. She was a small woman, spare, with hands that had grown thin and careful over the years. She kept 2 rooms clean the way some people keep a grave. Not out of grief. Out of order. There was a place for the kettle, a place for the small store of coal, a place for the writing slope by the window, where the light came off the sea in the early hours and lay pale on the paper. She earned her living penny by penny. She copied sermons. A curate in the town paid her a little to make fair copies of his week's work, and a bookseller sometimes gave her a hymnal to transcribe for a subscriber who wanted it in a clean hand. Her hand was very clean. It was small and even, and it never wandered. People who saw it said it was a hand that had never once been in a hurry. She had lived alone for a long time. Her 2 brothers were dead, Thomas first, then Edmund. She had never married. There had been no cruelty in that, and no great story. The years had simply gone by, and the men who might have asked had asked elsewhere, and she had learned, without bitterness, to be the aunt, the spare woman at the edge of the table, the one who was written to when the money ran short. She walked the shingle most afternoons. The stones shifted under her feet with that long, dragging sigh the sea makes when it pulls back. She liked the sound. She would go as far as the fishermen's huts, the tall black net shops, and stand a while and come back. It cost nothing. That mattered, on £47 a year. And she kept letters. That was the thing about her that nobody understood, because nobody had ever thought to ask. She kept every letter that had ever been sent to her. Not the money. The money was spent the day it came, on coal and rent and a little tea. But the letters stayed. She had 3 deal boxes for them, plain pine boxes a carpenter had knocked together for her years ago, and she had filed her whole life in them. She could have told you why, if you had asked. She had thought about it once, standing at the window with a fresh letter in her hand. Letters were the only property she owned that could never be spent. Money went. Furniture wore out and was sold. But a letter, once written, once sent, once kept, that was hers forever, and no landlord and no quarter day could take it from her. It was the one kind of wealth a poor woman could hold on to. She had never once thrown a letter away. It had not occurred to her that this was strange. So the boxes filled, year on year. The first box went back the furthest, to when her brothers were young men and full of plans. The second held the middle years, and the third held the recent things. The quarter-day letters, mostly now, the little printed cards at Christmas that stopped coming after a while, the occasional line from a solicitor. She labelled each one in her small even hand, the date, the sender, and laid it in its place. One morning in the summer a letter came that she knew before she opened it. She knew it by the day. It was near midsummer, near the quarter, and the quarter meant one thing. She opened it at the window. It was from her niece Clarissa, Edmund's girl, though the hand was hurried and the paper was good. better paper than Honoria could afford to write back on. "Dear Aunt," it began, "trusting this finds you well, might the usual £2 be advanced against Michaelmas? As things are a little pressed just now." She read it once. She did not read it twice. There was nothing in it to read twice. She knew the shape of these letters the way she knew the shape of the shingle. A greeting that hoped she was well and did not wait for the answer. A request. A promise to make it right at the next quarter. And a closing that sent love, in the abstract, the way you might send love to a name in a Bible. She took her pen. She wrote on the outside fold, in her small hand, the date and the sender. Clarissa Vaughan. And then she laid it in the third deal box, beside 20 years of others just like it, and she closed the lid. She did not answer that she had no £2 to spare. She never said that. If she had it, she sent a little. If she did not, she sent nothing, and no reproach either. She had stopped, somewhere in the last 11 years, expecting to matter to these people beyond the sum of £2 4 times a year. She did not grieve about it. She had simply set that expectation down, the way you set down a bag that has grown too heavy, and found she could walk more easily without it. The lid of the third box had a date on it too, inked at the corner where the wood was worn smooth by her hand. If you had been in that room, you would have seen it. You would not have thought it meant anything. It meant everything. But that comes later. Her sister-in-law died that autumn. Charlotte Fenn, Thomas's widow. She had been a proud woman, comfortable, settled in a good house near Rye, and she had not written to Honoria in years except through solicitors. When she died, there was a funeral, and to the funeral, for the first time in a very long while, the whole family came. Honoria went too. She wore her good black, which was also her only black, brushed and kept for exactly this. She sat where she was put, near the back, and she watched them. There was Gerald, Charlotte's son. He was 44 now, stout and sure of himself, with a watch chain across his front and a way of standing that took up room. He had done well, or said he had. There was his sister Augusta, older than him by a little, quieter, with a soft, anxious face that turned to Gerald before she said anything, to see what she was allowed to feel. These two were the creditor branch, though nobody yet used that word. Thomas's children, the ones with the good house and the settlement behind them. And there was the other side. Edmund's children, Julian, who was 40, and who kept to himself at the graveside with his hat in his hands, and looked, Honoria thought, tired in a way that had nothing to do with the walk. And Clarissa, who had written for the £2, and who did not seem to remember she had written it. After the burying they went back to the house, and there was sherry and cold meat, and the family stood about in Charlotte's good rooms and talked in the low voices people use when they are relieved the difficult part is over. Honoria stood near the window with a glass she did not drink and listened. That was when she heard the boxes mentioned. It was Augusta who said it first, not unkindly, only as a thing to fill the air. Poor Aunt Honoria still keeps all her letters, I hear, in boxes. Isn't that so, Aunt? Honoria said that it was so. And Gerald laughed. It was a comfortable laugh, the laugh of a man who has never once had to keep anything he did not want to keep. Poor Honoria's hoard, he said. Every scrap she's ever been sent, I shouldn't wonder. 20 years of Christmas cards and quarter-day begging. He said it as though the quarter-day begging were something Honoria had done, and not something done to her. Sentiment. Nothing but sentiment. Burn the lot when she's gone, I say. Save someone the trouble of sorting it. He said it in front of them all. In front of Julian, and Clarissa, and Augusta, and 2 or 3 cousins besides. And nobody contradicted him. Nobody said, "That's unkind, Gerald." Nobody said, "They're her letters. Let her keep them." Clarissa looked at her shoes. Julian looked out of the window past Honoria at the grey sky over the churchyard, and Augusta, who had raised the thing, gave a small laugh too, to be on the safe side, and looked away. Honoria stood very still by the window and said nothing. She was used to this. She had learned, long ago, that the safest place to keep a thing of value was somewhere no one thought to look, and there was no place on earth less looked at than the inside of a poor woman's regard. So she held her glass and she let it pass over her, the way the sea passes over the stones, and she thought her own thoughts, and none of them showed on her face. But she remembered it. She remembered all of it. That was the thing about Honoria that they had none of them understood. She did not keep only letters. What Gerald did not know, what none of them knew, was how thoroughly the rest of the family had unburdened itself of the past. Both households had moved twice in 20 years, and moving is when the papers go. When you move house, you stand in a bare room with a heap of old correspondence, business letters and settled accounts and dead men's promises, and you ask yourself the reasonable question: who keeps business letters 20 years? And you make a fire of them, and you feel lighter for it, and you move on to the new house with only the things that matter. Charlotte had burned hers. Thomas's whole business paper gone in a grate near Rye a decade back. Edmund's family had done the same when they came down in the world and moved to smaller rooms. There was no space in a small house for old ledgers and old letters, and so they had gone up the chimney too. Everyone had done the sensible thing. Everyone had cleared the record, everyone except the woman with the hoard. The spinster aunt with her deal boxes, whom nobody had ever asked to return a letter, because nobody had ever imagined she held anything worth returning. That was the perfection of it, though no one saw it yet. The neglect had been total, and the total neglect had preserved, whole and untouched, the one thing the family would soon be tearing itself apart to find. The tearing began with the will. Charlotte's will was read at the solicitors, in the offices of Trebek and Nye, in Rye, on a hard bright morning a few weeks after the funeral. Honoria was not asked to attend. She was told about it afterward, in pieces, and then all at once, because within a month the pieces came to her door whether she asked for them or not. What happened at the reading was this. The will itself was plain enough. Charlotte had left her house and her money, in the usual way, chiefly to Gerald, with a portion to Augusta. But when Mr. Trebek came to draw up the account of the estate, to know what there was to divide, he came upon a figure that would not lie down. And the whole family, both branches, came to a stop over it, the way a cart stops when a wheel drops into a rut. The figure was £600. And it went back to 1849. In 1849, Edmund Fenn's business had failed. Fenn and Cool, provision merchants of Bristol. It had gone down in one bad season, and Edmund with it, and to save him from the worst, to save the family name from the bankruptcy court, his brother Thomas had found £600 and sent it to Bristol. And the £600 had not come out of Thomas's pocket. Exactly, it had come out of Charlotte's settlement. Her marriage money. The money that was hers, secured to her when she married Thomas, and now, in law, part of the estate that Gerald and Augusta stood to inherit. There it sat in the account. £600 gone out of Charlotte's settlement in 1849, and never, on paper, come back. Gerald saw an asset. Of course he did. Gerald had the kind of mind that saw the world as a set of accounts. And here was £600 owing to his mother's estate, which was to say, owing to him. And not only the 600. 22 years had passed. 22 years of interest at 5%, near enough, and Gerald had done the sum before Mr. Trebek had finished speaking. £600, and better than 600 more in interest, something above £1,200, he said, owed by Edmund's children to Charlotte's estate. A loan. A loan is a loan. It falls due. But Edmund's children saw it differently. Julian and Clarissa. To them the £600 was no loan at all. It was a gift. A brother had saved a brother, in a bad year, and no honest family called such a thing a debt and dunned the children for it 20 years on. It was a gift, Clarissa said, hot in the face, and there was an end of it. To make it a loan was to make their father a defaulter, a man who took his brother's money and never paid it back, and she would not have her father's name blackened for Gerald's arithmetic. A gift, said one branch. A loan, said the other. £1,200 hung in the air between them. And Mr. Trebeck, who was a dry and careful man and wished for nothing in the world so much as to settle this estate quietly and be done, put the one question that mattered. Where, he asked, was the evidence? Was there a deed? There was no deed. Was there a bond, a note of hand, anything under Edmund's signature acknowledging the £600 as a loan and promising repayment? Gerald was sure there must be. Gerald was certain his mother would have kept such a thing. But Charlotte had burned her papers. Was there a letter then on the other side, anything to show it had been given freely, as a gift, with no expectation of return? Julian searched his memory and his few remaining boxes and found nothing. Edmund's papers had gone up the chimney too. Both households had destroyed everything. There was not one scrap of writing on either side to say what the £600 had been. And so, said Mr. Trebeck, they had a difficulty. Without written evidence, the matter could not be settled by agreement, because the two branches would never agree. It would go to Chancery, and Chancery, he told them, in that dry voice, would take years, and would eat the disputed sum and a good deal more besides in costs, and at the end of it both branches would very likely be poorer than if they had never claimed a penny. He had seen it a dozen times. The estate must be wound up before Michaelmas, the 29th of September, or the costs would begin to run in earnest. Michaelmas, he set a clock ticking over the whole family. Produce written evidence, one way or the other, before the 29th of September, or let Chancery ruin you both. Deadlock, in public. With a clock. And not one of them, standing in that office, thought for a single moment of the deal boxes in the 2 rooms above the stationer's in Hastings. Why would they? They were only sentiment. Poor Honoria's hoard. Fit for burning. It was Julian who thought of it first, and it took him a fortnight to think of it, and even then it came sideways, the way the important things do. He was going through what little he had of his father's, which was almost nothing, one evening in his own house, with the Michaelmas date pressing on him like a hand on the back of his neck. He was not a rich man. He was a decent one, which is a different thing, and often a harder one. And he wanted, more than he wanted the money settled his way, for the business to be settled honestly, and for his father not to go down in the family reckoning as a cheat. And as he sat there with the empty boxes, he remembered a thing his father had said, years and years ago, near the end. Edmund had been talking about the bad year, the way old men talk about the worst thing that ever happened to them, going round and round it, and he had said something about letters. I wrote it all to Honoria, he had said. In the bad year. Honoria always kept things. Julian had not thought about it in years. It had meant nothing at the time. An old man's wandering. I wrote it all to Honoria. Julian sat very still. And then he understood 2 things at once, and the second one shamed him. The first was that the evidence might exist. That somewhere in the boxes the whole family had laughed at, there might be letters from 1849. From his father. About the £600. Written, dated, kept. The second thing was worse. It was that in 11 years not one of them had written to Honoria except to ask her for £2. That the woman who might now hold the fate of the entire family in 3 pine boxes was the one woman they had all agreed to forget. That he himself had stood at Charlotte's funeral and said nothing. Nothing at all, while Gerald called her letters sentiment and told them to burn her. He went to Hastings the next week. It was the first time anyone in the family had gone to see Honoria, not for money, not for a funeral, simply gone to her in over a decade. He found the stationer's shop and the narrow door beside it, and he climbed the stair. And when she opened the door to him, he saw, in one glance, how she lived. The 2 rooms, very clean and very bare, the single good chair which she gave to him, the cold grate with its careful little store of coal that she would not light for herself in the afternoon, but lit now, for him, taking 3 lumps from the store as though they were 3 coins. The smell of the sea coming in at the window, and the writing slope and the copied sermons stacked square upon it, her whole living, penny by penny. He was ashamed. He had known she was poor. He had not known it was this, and she had never once, in all the quarter-day letters, in all the years of being asked for £2 by people who lived better than she did, written a word of reproach to any of them. She made him tea. She did not ask why he had come. She waited, with her hands folded, and let him find his way to it. He told her. All of it. Charlotte's death, the will, the £600, the loan and the gift, the deadlock, Chancery, Michaelmas. He told it badly, going back and forth, and she followed every turn of it without a word, and he saw that she understood it faster than he did, that she had it whole while he was still explaining, and at the last he said the thing he had come to say, and he was afraid, saying it, of what it made him. Aunt Honoria, my father once told me he wrote to you. In 1849. In the bad year. Do you? Is it possible you still have? He could not finish it. Honoria did not answer at once. She rose from her chair, and she went to the corner of the room, where 3 plain pine boxes stood one upon another against the wall, their lids dated in ink at the worn corners, and she laid her hand flat on the top of the 3rd box, just laid it there, and rested it, and looked at him across the small clean room, with the sea wind moving at the glass. I have never thrown a letter away, Julian, she said. It did not occur to me that this was strange. She did not open the box. Not then. And Julian, watching her hand upon the lid, felt the whole thing turn under him like a tide. But it was not to be so simple, because Julian was not the only one who could remember an old man's words. He had said too much, somewhere, to the wrong person, or Clarissa had guessed his errand, or word simply travels in families the way damp travels in a wall. Within days of his going to Hastings, the other branch knew that the debtor side had gone to the old woman, and Gerald did not like it at all. Gerald's mind, being the kind of mind it was, saw only one thing in Julian's visit. Coaching, the debtor branch had run to the aunt to get her to say what suited them. To have her swear the £600 was a gift. An old, poor, forgotten woman, easily led, easily flattered by a nephew who suddenly remembered she existed. Of course they would use her. Gerald would not stand for it. So Gerald came to Hastings too, and he brought Augusta, and he came hard, within the week, up that same narrow stair. He did not see the 2 bare rooms the way Julian had seen them. He looked about the place and saw only what he expected to see, an old woman's poverty, faintly distasteful, faintly his own affair now that she might be of use. He did not take the good chair when it was offered, because he did not sit at all. He stood, filling the little room, his watch chain bright, and he came to the point the way he came to everything. "You've had Julian here," he said. "I know it. I won't have you led, Aunt. I'll tell you the truth of the matter plainly, since he'll not have done. That £600 was a loan. My mother's money, lent to save Edmund's neck, and never paid back, and it is owed to her estate with the interest on it, and that is the fact, whatever Julian's told you. You'll remember it was a loan. If there's any letter in those boxes of yours, it'll say so, and you'll bring it out and let Trebek see it, and there's an end." He did not ask her. He told her what she would remember. He told her what her own dead brother's letters would say, before he had seen a line of them. And beside him Augusta stood with her soft, anxious face, saying nothing, glancing at her brother to see what she was to feel. Honoria heard him out. She sat with her hands folded, and she let him finish, the way she let the sea finish. And when he had done, she did not say he was right, and she did not say he was wrong. She said only that she would think on it, that the letters were her own, and that she would let no one, on either side, tell her what they contained until she had read them herself, in the order they were written. Gerald did not care for that answer. But there was nothing in it he could take hold of, and so he went, with Augusta trailing after, and on the stair he said something to his sister that Honoria heard through the thin door, about the old woman having her wits still, more's the pity, and how the debtor side had got to her first. And then the letters began to come to her, from a distance, not visits now. Letters, it was almost funny, if she had been a woman who let herself be amused. For 11 years the only letters had been the quarter-day ones, asking for £2, and now, suddenly, they wrote to her freely, both sides, and every letter was an instruction dressed as affection. Clarissa wrote, warm and pressing, "Dear Aunt, you were always so fond of Papa. You'll not let his name be dragged down. You know it was a gift. You must say it was a gift." And Gerald wrote, short and hard, reminding her of her duty to her brother Thomas's memory, that it was a loan and she was to confirm it. Both branches, silent toward her for 11 long years, now bent over their writing slopes to tell this forgotten woman what the truth should be. She read each one once. She wrote the date and the sender on the fold in her small, even hand. And she laid each one in the third box, on top of all the others, and she answered none of them. She did not answer, because she had already begun to do the thing she meant to do, and it had nothing to do with what either of them wanted. She had opened the boxes. Not for Julian, not for Gerald, but for herself. Alone, in the evenings, with a single candle, she had begun to go down through the years, and near the bottom of the first box, wrapped in the soft foxed paper of long-kept things, she had found them. 4 letters, 2 in her brother Edmund's hand and 2 in Charlotte's. Dated 1849, 1850, 1855, 1856, she had read them once, slowly in the candlelight, and then she had sat a long time with them in her lap and the candle burning down, and her face had not changed at all, but something behind it had gone very quiet and very sure, because she knew now what they said. And she knew that what they said would please no one. Not Gerald, with his loan and his interest. Not Clarissa, with her proud, clean gift. The truth in those 4 letters belonged to neither branch. It belonged only to itself. She sat at her one good table, on a grey afternoon with the tide going out, and she took a clean sheet of her copying paper, and she wrote 2 letters in her small, even hand. One to Trebeck and Nye, at Rye. One to be sent round to both branches at once. And they all said the same thing. She asked them to come to her, to the 2 rooms above the stationer's in Hastings, on Michaelmas Eve, the night before the money came due. Both branches and the solicitor together, in her rooms. And she wrote 1 line more, the same in every letter, and it was the nearest thing to a demand that Honoria Fenn had made of her family in 22 years. "I shall read them in the order they came," she wrote. "The truth sits better in its own sequence than in ours." She sealed the letters. She walked down to the post with them herself, along the shingle, the stones sighing under her feet. And she thought, as she dropped them in, of Gerald's voice at the funeral, easy and sure, telling them all to burn her hoard when she was gone. They would all be in her 2 rooms in 9 days' time, both branches and the law and the clock. And on her one good table, waiting under the candle, 4 letters that not one of them had ever thought to ask for, because not one of them had ever imagined that the woman they forgot to write to was the only one who had kept the record of what they'd done. She turned for home along the darkening beach. 9 days. And she had not yet decided how much of her own long silence she would let them hear. The 9 days did not hurry for her. She did not hurry them. Each morning she woke to the gulls and the grey light off the water, and she dressed, and she made her small breakfast, and then she went to the boxes. She did not rush the sorting. She had waited 22 years to be asked what she held. She could wait 9 days more to lay it out plain. She took the 4 letters from the bottom of the first deal box. She set them on the writing slope by the window in the order they had come. 1849, 1850, 1855, 1856. 2 in Edmund's hand, 2 in Charlotte's. She unfolded each one along its old creases, careful, the way you handle a thing that has grown brittle with keeping. Then she pressed them flat under a clean board, so they would lie open on the table and not curl back into themselves when the family came. She read them again by daylight. She wanted no surprises in her own rooms. She wanted to know each word before another mouth said it aloud. On the 7th day, Julian came again. She heard his step on the stair, and she knew it, a lighter step than Gerald's. He knocked and took off his hat before she had the door full open, and stood there in the low doorway with the sea behind him. "I had your letter," he said. "I could not stay away till the night. I had to know if—" He stopped. "Aunt, what is it you mean to read to us?" She let him in. She gave him the good chair. She did not offer to tell him, and he did not press. He looked instead at the table, at the 4 flattened letters under the board, at the 3 deal boxes standing where she had set them, and something moved in his face that was close to shame and close to hope at once. "You kept them," he said, "all this while. My father's letters, my own." "I kept everything," she said. "It never occurred to me to do otherwise." He turned one of the boxes a little to read the date inked at the corner of the lid. His hand was not quite steady. "I did not write to you," he said. "Not once, not in 11 years. Except when I wanted the £2. "No," she said. "You did not." She said it without heat. That was the thing he had not been ready for. There was no reproach in her at all, and that was worse for him than any reproach could have been. He looked at the floor. "You did not write to me for 11 years, she said. "You will forgive me." "I kept everything you sent for 22. He did not answer that. There was nothing to answer. He sat with his hat in his hands, a grown man of 40, and he looked at the poor clean room and the mended cuffs of her sleeves and the £47 a year that showed in every corner of the place, and he understood, perhaps for the first time, what his family had spent 11 years not looking at. "Whatever they say," he said at last, "whatever is in them, I will stand by what the record says. I give you my word." "You need not give me your word," she said. "The letters will say what they say. It will not need your standing by." He left before dark. She watched him go down the shingle from her window, small against the grey, and she thought that of them all, he was the only one who had come to her rooms and looked at her, and not at what he could get from her. Then it was Michaelmas Eve. They came near dusk, all of them, up the narrow stair, one after another, into 2 rooms that had never held so many. Gerald first, broad and sure, filling the doorway, his eyes going round the mean little place with a look that priced every stick of it. Augusta behind him, anxious, twisting her gloves. Clarissa, proud and pale, in a good dark dress that had cost more than Honoria's rooms in a quarter. Julian, quiet, keeping to the wall. And last, Miss Trebeck, the solicitor from Rye, a dry, precise man with a leather case under his arm, who bowed to Honoria as though she were a lady in a proper house and not a spinster in 2 rooms above a shop. She had set out what chairs she had. It was not enough. Gerald took one without asking. Some of them stood. On the table, under the single candle, lay the 4 letters, flattened and open, and the 3 deal boxes behind them. "Well," said Gerald, rubbing his hands, brisk, "we are all here, Aunt, at your summons. It is a long way to come on a cold night to 2 rooms in Hastings. I hope it is worth the journey. The money comes due tomorrow. Mr. Trebeck will tell you Chancery will not wait for sentiment." "It will not," said Trebeck, mildly, The Michaelmas term is upon us. If there is written evidence of the advance of 1849, it must be produced now, or the matter goes to costs that will beggar both branches of this family. I have said as much to everyone in this room. I say it again. There is no written evidence, said Gerald. We all burned our old papers years ago. Who keeps business letters 20 years? He turned his heavy look on Honoria, and he smiled, and it was not a kind smile, except, it seems, our aunt, who keeps everything. So, Aunt Honoria, you called us. You must have something to say. Say it. Was the £600 a loan to my Uncle Edmund from my mother's own settlement owed with interest to this day, yes or no? Clarissa spoke before Honoria could. It was a gift, she said, her chin up. My father took no man's charity as a loan. It was a gift between brothers, and it is an insult to call it less. It was £600, said Gerald. At 5%, over 22 years, that is near £1,200 owed to my mother's estate. I will have it counted, or I will have Chancery. You will have what the letters say, said Honoria. It was the first she had spoken since they came in. Her voice was small in the crowded room, but it stopped them, because she had never in 22 years demanded anything of any of them, and now she stood at the head of her own poor table and looked at them all in turn. I asked you here, she said, to read 4 letters. In the order they came, not in the order that suits Gerald, nor the order that suits Clarissa. In the order the post brought them. The truth sits better in its own sequence than in ours. Mr. Trebek, you will watch that I read them fair, and when I have done you will say whether they are what I say they are. I will, said Trebek. He drew his chair a little closer to the candle. Read, Miss Fenn. She took up the first letter. Edmund's hand, 1849. This is from your father, Julian and Clarissa, she said, and from your uncle, Gerald and Augusta. Written the spring the house of Fenn and Cool failed in Bristol, when he was ruined and had 4 small children and no way to pay his men. She read it. Her voice did not shake. Dear Honoria, I write to you because I can write it to no one else and keep my head up in the street. Thomas has saved me. He has put £600 into my hand out of Charlotte's own settlement to hold off the creditors and keep the children fed. I have taken it. God forgive me, I have taken my brother's wife's money. I will repay it as the house recovers, every pound. Though Thomas would have me sign no bond and name no term, I could not let it stand as charity between us. It is a debt. I mean to answer it as a debt. Only you are to know how near we came to the workhouse this month. Burn this. Your brother Edmund, the room was very still. Somewhere below, a shutter banged in the wind. Clarissa had gone white. That, she began. That is your father's own hand, said Honoria gently. He called it a debt himself, my dear. In this room we do not call your father a liar to make him a prouder man. It was a loan. He said so. He was too honest to say otherwise, even to me, even asking me to burn it. Clarissa said nothing. Her chin had come down. Gerald sat forward, and there was triumph all over him. There, he said, you have it, Trebek, in the debtor's own hand. A loan, £600. Now we count the interest, and I have 3 more letters, said Honoria. She laid the first down and took up the second. Charlotte's hand, 1850. This is from your mother, Gerald, and your mother, Augusta, written the year after, when your father and your uncle had been quarrelling over the terms of the thing. And Edmund would insist on interest, and Thomas would take none, and Charlotte, whose money it was, wrote to me to settle her own mind. Augusta made a small sound. Gerald had gone very quiet. Dear Honoria, Honoria read, you will laugh at me for writing it down, but I must say it to someone sensible. The men have been at it again over Edmund's £600. Thomas says take nothing back. Edmund says he will pay interest or die of shame. And nobody thinks to ask me, and it was my money. So I will tell you, and you may keep it, for you keep everything. The money was mine, from my own settlement, and I gave it as a sister gives to a brother in trouble. No interest was ever named between us, and none ever shall be, whatever the men say to save their pride. If Edmund can repay the sum in time, well and good. If he cannot, it is no matter. I did not lend it to grow. I gave it to save children. Charlotte, Honoria set the letter down. No interest was ever named between us, she said. In your mother's own hand, Gerald, she says it plain. She gave it as her own money, and she named no interest, and she says none ever shall be named. Your £1,200 is 600, and never a penny more, and your own mother is the one who says so. Gerald's face had gone from red to something duller. That proves nothing, he said, but the brisk had gone out of his voice. A woman's soft letter to an old maid, a woman's letter about her own money, said Trebek quietly, written contemporaneously, is very good evidence indeed, Mr. Fenn. I would not be so quick to wave it away. Go on, Miss Fenn. She took up the third letter. Edmund again. 1855, 6 years on, she said, your father Julian, still paying at it, all that while, a little when he could. Dear Honoria, a better year at last. I have paid Thomas £150 this Lady Day, in good notes, all I could scrape together and more than I ought, and it near cleaned me out, but I have done it. Thomas has set it down as the last he will ask of me. He said it to my face and shook my hand on it. So we are square, he says, whatever is owed on paper. I do not feel square. I owe £450 still by my own reckoning, but he will hear no more of it, and I am too tired and too grateful to fight him. Set this by with the rest, Honoria. You are the only ledger this family keeps. Edmund, £150, said Honoria, paid Lady Day 1855, and Thomas himself calling it the last he would ask. So it is not 600 owing, Gerald, even at the plain figure. It is 450. Your father took the payment, shook your uncle's hand on it, and said he wanted no more. My father is dead, said Gerald. Thickly, he cannot be shaken for it now. No, said Honoria. He cannot. But your mother could write, and did. She took up the fourth letter. Charlotte, 1856, the last. This is the year your Uncle Edmund died, my dears. The winter he was carried off. And this is what your mother wrote to me when she heard of it. She read it slowly. She had read it many times now, alone, and still it cost her something. Dear Honoria. So Edmund is gone, and I sit here a widow writing to a spinster, and the men who made all the noise are both in the ground, and what is left of their great quarrel but a figure in a book. I will not have it hang over his children. Let the remaining £450 be spoken of no more. It was never to be a debt against his children, and I will not have Julian and Clarissa grow up owing my son a farthing. I forgive it. Do you hear me, Honoria? I, whose money it was, forgive it freely and forever, and I put it in writing to you because you keep writing safe when the rest of us burn ours in a temper. If ever it is raised again after I am gone, you are to bring this out and read it. Charlotte Fenn. The candle guttered. No one spoke. Honoria laid the fourth letter down beside the other three, and she folded her hands, and she looked at the whole silent room. That is the record, she said, in the order it came. It was a loan. Your father owned it, Clarissa. There was never any interest. Your mother forbade it, Gerald. £150 of it was paid. And the 450 that remained, your own mother forgave in writing, freely and forever, and asked me to bring it out on just such a night as this. I have kept it 15 years for her to say it for herself. There is nothing owed, not by anyone, to anyone. The quarrel is dead, and your mother killed it, Gerald, with her own hand, before you were ever grown enough to raise it. For a long moment, Gerald did not move. Then he came up out of his chair, and his face was ugly, and he flung out his arm at the table. "Lies," he said. "It is a trick. Look at them, copied out fair, all four, flat and neat as a schoolgirl's exercise. She has written them herself, a bitter old woman with a grudge and a pen and 11 years to brood. She has made the dates to suit. She has forged my mother's hand. Sentiment made to order. I said at the funeral it should be burned, and I was right. You will not tell me that letters no one has seen in 20 years, that turn up in this hovel the very night the money comes due, and settle it all so tidy against me, you will not tell me those are real. Trebek, you are a lawyer. You cannot let this stand." It was the thing Honoria had known would come. She did not flinch at it. She had lived 60 years and been thought nothing of for most of them, and she knew that when a man like Gerald is cornered, he does not doubt himself. He doubts you. She only turned to Trebek. "Sir," she said, "you asked to judge whether they are what I say." "Judge?" Trebek rose. He did not hurry either. He took a pair of spectacles from his breast pocket and set them on his nose, and he took up the first letter and carried it to the candle, and he looked at it the way a man looks at a thing he has looked at 10,000 times in his working life. "This paper," he said, "is a laid paper of the trade of 30 years since. It is foxed and worn along its true creases, not new-folded. Here," he turned it. "The letter is not merely written, it has been through the post. Do you see, Mr. Fenn? The seal, the direction, the mark of the receiving office. This one is franked at Bristol. The stamp is the penny issue of its year, cancelled in the manner of that year, which no forger sitting in Hastings this autumn could counterfeit, for the dies are changed and gone. I have handled 40 years of correspondence, sir. I know a made letter from a kept one, as you know a sound coin from a light one." He set it down and took up Charlotte's. "And this," he said, "is your mother's hand, Mr. Fenn and Mrs. Sedley's. I drew Mrs. Charlotte Fenn's own will, not 2 years gone. I have her signature in my strong room at Rye this night. I know the fall of her tea, and the way she left her open at the top. This is her hand. It is her hand in 1850 and her hand in 1856, aged the proper amount between, as a living hand ages and a copied one does not. No, sir, these are no forgeries. I will stake my certificate and my name upon it. This correspondence is genuine and contemporaneous, and I rule it admissible. Every word. It settles the matter entirely. There is no debt. Your claim falls." He set the letter down. He looked at Gerald over his spectacles, not unkindly. "You may go to Chancery if you wish, Mr. Fenn," he said. "But you will go alone, and against your own mother's written hand, and you will lose, and it will cost you everything. My advice, as your family's man, is that you sit down." Gerald sat down. He did not sit because he was persuaded. Honoria saw that. He sat because there was nothing left to stand on. The record had been read by a mouth he could not shout down, and confirmed by a man whose word the law would take over his. He had come up her stair the master of the family fortune, and in the space of 4 letters and 1 candle, he had been made nothing. And by whom? By the aunt he had told them all to burn. And still she did not gloat. That was the thing they none of them expected of her, and the thing that undid them more than any triumph could have. She smoothed the 4 letters with her old hand, and she spoke as quietly as she had begun. "I want none of it," she said. They looked at her. "You are all waiting to see what I will take," she said. "I have watched you wait since you came up my stair. What I will ask, now I hold the whip. So I will tell you, and then we may all sleep. I ask for nothing. Not a penny of the £600, not a penny of Charlotte's estate, not a farthing for my own 2 rooms, though you have seen how I live. I did not keep these letters to sell them back to you. I kept them because I keep everything. That is all." She drew a breath. "But I will have 3 things, and they cost none of you money. The first. The letters stay here. The originals stay in my keeping, in my boxes, where they have been safe these 20 years, and will be safe after I am gone. You have shown me what you do with paper you dislike. You burn it. These you shall not burn. The second. Mr. Trebeck will make a fair copy of all four, in his own clear hand, and every one of you, both branches, will sign it, tonight at this table, that it is a true copy of the record. That signed copy is the family's, to end the quarrel forever. The originals are mine. The truth belongs to everyone. The paper belongs to me. And the third. Here her voice changed, only a little, but they all heard it. Edmund Fenn is not to be entered anywhere, in any deed or any account, as a defaulter. He is to be entered as a man who took a loan to save his children, and paid back what he could to the last shilling of his strength, and was forgiven the rest by his own sister, in law of her free will. That is the truth, and that is how he shall be written. I have kept his name clean in a box for 22 years. I will not have it dirtied now, that he cannot speak for himself. Those are my terms. There are no others. Trebeck inclined his head. They are just terms, he said. And without your originals, Miss Fenn, there is only Chancery for the lot of them. I will draw the copy tonight. Will the family sign? There was a silence. Then Julian stepped forward from the wall where he had stood the whole while. I will sign, he said. Gladly, and after him, slowly, the others. Trebeck drew the fair copy at her small table by the guttering candle, in his neat clerk's hand, and he read the terms aloud when it was done, so that each of them had to answer to it in turn, out loud, in that room. Julian signed first of his branch. Then he did a thing none of them had thought to do. He knelt down by the deal box there on Honoria's bare floor, and he gathered up the 4 letters, gently, when the copy was made, and he laid them back into the box himself, in order, 1849, 1850, 1855, 1856, the way she had them, and he closed the lid. He looked up at her from the floor. I understand it now, he said. What you did tonight, you could have named any price. Either side would have paid it to have those letters go the way they wanted. You held all our fortunes in this box, and you took nothing, and you told the truth even though the truth cost my sister her pride, and cost Gerald his claim, and got you not 1 shilling. I did not see you for 11 years, aunt. I am ashamed of it to my bones. He stood. I will write to you now. Not at the quarter days, not for money, on ordinary days to ask how you do. If you will have my letters. I will have them, she said. I keep everything. Clarissa came next. She did not speak much. Her proud story was gone, the pure, clean gift she had wanted her father to have made. But something else had come in its place, and she seemed to feel the exchange was not a bad one. Her father's name was clean. He was no defaulter now, on any page. She came to Honoria, and she reached out, and she laid her gloved hand over her aunt's old bare one on the table. It was the first time any of them had touched her in 11 years. She did not say sorry. She only pressed the hand and let it go. Augusta had been reading and rereading her mother's last letter over Trebeck's shoulder while he copied it. Now she put her face in her hands and wept, quietly, the way a woman weeps who has just heard her dead mother's own kindness read aloud in a stranger's room. That is Mama, she said to no one. That is just what Mama would say. Let it be spoken of no more. Oh, I withdraw it. Whatever Gerald claims, I withdraw my part. I want none of it either. Mamma forgave it. Who am I to unforgive it? And she signed, with a wet pen, her name beneath Julian's. Then there was Gerald. He signed last, because he must, because Chancery would ruin him alone, and the copy was worth nothing without every name. He signed hard, the pen near tearing the paper, and when it was done he stood and put on his hat in her room without asking, and he could not go without one last word, because his kind never can. You were lucky, he said to her, low, at the door. That is all it was. Lucky to have kept them. Any fool can keep things. It takes no cleverness to be a hoarder in a garret. And Honoria Fenn, 60 years old, on £47 a year, looked at her nephew of 44, who had told a room full of mourners to burn her, and she gave him the only sharp thing she said all night. "You never needed my letters until today, Gerald," she said. "You shall not have them now." He did not understand her, even then. He went down her stair without the record, muttering, and never once grasped that he had held all their fates in his hands the day he dismissed them, and thrown it away with a laugh, and that the woman he pitied had been the richest of the lot the whole time, in the one coin his family had been too careless to keep. Trebek was the last to go. He folded the signed copy into his leather case with great care. At the door he turned and bowed to her again, lower this time. "I shall lodge this at Rye tomorrow, Miss Fenn," he said, "and I shall name the boxes in the deed if you permit, so there is no confusion hereafter about where the truth of this family is kept." He almost smiled. "The record of the family Fenn," he said, "in the keeping of Miss Honoria Fenn. It reads well. It reads true. Good night to you, madam. It has been an honour." And then they were all gone, down the dark stair, out into the Michaelmas wind, and the 2 rooms were her own again, and quiet, and the candle burned down to its last inch over the shut-box on the table. She did not feel triumphant. She felt only tired, and oddly light, as though she had set down a weight she had not known she carried. She put the box back in its place with the other 2. She snuffed the candle. She went to bed, and slept, and the money came due the next morning and troubled no one, because there was nothing owed. Spring came to the shingle, 6 months on, and the wind off the water was soft again, and the light came back long in the evenings. Honoria walked the beach as she always had, the stones sighing under her feet, and she went home to her 2 rooms and her copying and her £47 a year, which had not changed because she had asked for nothing, and would not. But something had changed. The letters came now, real ones, on ordinary days. Julian's came first and kept coming, once a fortnight without fail, full of nothing in particular, the weather, his children, a book he had read, a question of how her chest did in the damp. Then Clarissa's, stiff at first, then warmer, telling her small things she told no one else, and at last, one soft April morning, one from Augusta too, in a round, anxious hand, asking only how her aunt did, and was she warm, and might she come and sit with her some day by the sea. None of them asked for money, not one. Honoria read each letter once, the way she always had, sitting by the window with the tide going out. And then she took a new box, a 4th deal box, clean and empty, that she had bought with her own pennies down at the stationer's below, and she labelled each letter in her small even hand with the date, and she laid it inside. It was the first box she had ever begun that held letters worth keeping for their own sake. Not begging letters, not money at the quarter days, just family, writing to family at last, on ordinary days, because they wished to. They had stopped writing to the one person who kept the record. For 11 years they wrote to her only when they wanted something, and left the only copy of the truth to gather dust in a poor woman's garret. And when the truth was needed, it was all she had, and she had it whole. She never made it a weapon. She could have. Any other soul might have. She only kept it the way she had kept everything, and let it speak in its own order, and asked for nothing back. And that was enough. That was the whole of it. She closed the lid of the 4th box, and dated the corner in ink, and set it beside the other 3, where the record of the family Fenn was kept, and always would be, in the keeping of Honoria Fenn. If you have watched this far, then you are very likely the one in your own family who kept the letters, the photographs, the record the others let go. So tell me, before you leave, comment which town you are watching from. I should dearly like to see how far this story has travelled.